All right, the select board meeting of Monday, October 16th will call to order. Roll call attendance.
Mentor here.
Capiello here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Agenda review and approval. I think we're going to remove item 5, no, under the consent agenda, letter F, that proposal. And under old business, I would like to remove the agenda. I just have a comment on it. Yes, so I'm going to remove the meeting. It was just a comment I had. Anything else?
So remove A and remove F. I would second that motion.
Moved in, so second?
Hardikoff, aye.
Capiello, aye. Public comment. Let me read a few instructions here. Meetings are open to the public, but public participation is limited. If you wish to be heard by the select board, please note that the 2 public comment portions of the meeting to speak on the meeting agenda or matters pertaining to the business of the select board. In addition, public hearings may be scheduled for specific public comment. Speakers must be residents of the town of Barrington, property owners of the town, or designated representatives of recognized civic organizations or businesses located in the town of Barrington. When they are addressed and permitted to speak by the chair, speakers first need to recite their name and address for the records. Visitors should address their comments to the chair and the select board as a body and not to any specific member. Each speaker shall be provided a single opportunity for comment limited to 3 minutes. Comment should be, if you're scheduled for a public comment or a longer comment, those should be limited to 15 minutes. Visitors should not expect a response to their comments or questions since the select board may not have discussed or taken a position on a matter. Public comment is not a two-way dialogue between speakers, select board, and/or the town administrator. The chair will preserve strict order and decorum at all select board meetings. Obscene, violent, disruptive, disorderly comments or those likely to induce violence, disruption, or disorder are not permitted at all and will not be tolerated. Complaints regarding town staff should be directed to the town administrator. Given that, do we have any public comment tonight? How about online? Any public comment? Looks like none, so I will close public comment. And then we have a public hearing and invited guest. I don't think there's anyone here from the school board this evening. And we have the 2024 budget presentation. Our town administrator is not here to give the presentation in person, but he has created a recording. So I'm querying the select board if you would like to put it into the record or if you would like to play it. It's 20 PowerPoint pages that is going to take about 22 minutes.
I'd recommend seeing it and attaching it so that people
Okay,
at their leisure.
so then I
review
would
it.
ask you to play it.
Yeah.
So we'll begin the recording.
I want to provide a brief narrative of the 2024 initial budget proposal. This is a process that starts over the summer each year with department heads preparing their initial budget request to the finance administrator and town administrator. Then that request is reduced down to what is presented to the select board and budget committee for the budget process, which starts tonight. So the initial request from department heads was just over 14% budget increase over the 2023 budget. And the budget we are presenting tonight to start the budget development process with the Select Board and Budget Committee is just over 9% of an increase over last year. The materials that the Select Board and Budget Committee have include an over 300-page budget binder, which is also available entirely electronically at barrington.nh.gov/2024 budget. This document has details on every single account line and backup information for every budget request, whether it's the same request as the last 10 years or a new request this year. We add to this document both physically and electronically throughout the process as information changes and as the Select Board and Advisory Budget Committee recommend changes to the budget itself. Would encourage anybody that has questions about the budget, whether that be a Select Board member, a Budget Committee member, or just a member of the public, to review the materials available and see if questions remain. If they do, certainly feel free to reach out to the town. You can send an email to ask@barrington.nh.gov with any questions. This presentation is also available at that webpage on the budget binder, and it's at the very beginning of the Select Board and Budget Committee's binders that they have, the printed copies. So we'll get into it. First, just to set the stage, looking at the demographics and population in Barrington. The Consumer Price Index data shows about 2.25% increase over the last 12 months. Importantly, as the Budget Committee noted, the traditional CPI data does not include energy or food costs in their calculation. And so we may have some better data to look at farther into the process. So the population in Barrington continues to grow, up 191 from the 2020 census. Average household income also continues to grow, now over 100,000 at $102,512. The owner-occupied housing in Barrington remains high at 92.4%. Continuing looking at the local government services we provide, the services are funded from a variety of different sources. Most notably is property taxes. That's what most folks think of when they think about the government, their local government. They think about the property taxes that they pay towards those services. What you'll see from this pie chart is property taxes make up just under half of the funding that we use to provide services in Barrington at 48%. Vehicle registration is the next biggest piece of the pie at 27%. State and federal aid, which is primarily state aid, is at 12%, and that's a piece of the pie that has been growing over the last couple of years, and we hope will continue to grow. Rooms and meals tax distribution from the state is a big portion of that, and the state is committed to using a formula to as a cost share. So as rooms and meals tax collection at the state level increases, so too will distribution to communities. So looking at that 48% piece of the pie, the municipal tax rate is the portion that goes to fund the town services out of the entire property tax rate. So this is a history dating back to 2015. You'll see that the rate has remained relatively stable. One thing that happens to the tax rate is as property values change with a revaluation, the rate will either go up or down accordingly to offset the changes in values overall. And so you'll see in 2017, 2019, and 2021, the rate all dropped a proportional share of what the increase in assessed values were. We have that happening again this year in Barrington. There was a revaluation performed in 2023, and the assessed values went up an average of 30%, and we expect the rate to drop between 25 and 30% to correspond with the increase in values. So at $3 in 2022, that municipal tax rate is 15% of the overall tax rate. Here's that same data just in a line chart. Now, speaking of Barrington's municipal tax rate being 15%, you'll see that this bar chart shows a variety of metrics which compares Barrington's size to its municipal tax rate, that $3 a thousand. And so the first set of data shows that our tax rate of 1985 puts Barrington in the 44th percentile across the state, so middle of the pack. But at 15% of the total, Barrington's municipal tax rate represents the 6th percentile, meaning 94% of the communities in the state have a larger portion of the total tax rate going to fund their local government services. The next metric shows population. Barrington is in the 87th percentile by population, so only 13% of communities in the state are larger than Barrington by population. But our tax rate per capita, if you look at it that way, but corrected for population, we're in the 8th percentile, so relatively small. Same thing with assessed value, 83rd percentile for value, and with the tax rate corrected for value, we're the 14th percentile. 80th percentile for land area, 9th percentile for land area corrected for the municipal tax rate. We'll update that data once the 2023 tax rates are set across the state. Now, looking at financial stability, we want to see a stable municipal tax rate, which we saw Barrington has. We also want to see a healthy balance in unassigned fund balance. The Department of Revenue Administration recommends between 8 and 17% of our regular general fund operating expenditures. Currently, Barrington holds just over 5 million or 15.3%. This is partially higher than normal because the warrant articles in 2023 were presented on the tax rate, and we expect the select board to use a portion of that unassigned fund balance to buy down the tax rate later this month or early next month when our tax rate is set. And that conversation about how warrant articles are presented with or without fund balance as a funding source will be a topic of conversation through the budget development process this year. Looking at unassigned fund balance, this shows the amount of unassigned fund balance Barrington has held historically back to 2017 and how much has been used each year. And if you look at the bottom right, that 688,000, that's the amount the select board proposed to use during the March town meeting to buy down the tax rate. And we expect that the select board will use at least that much, but depending on where the tax rate comes in, use a little bit more if necessary. Again, this chart shows the same data, but just in a little bit of a different way. That orange line shows the percentage of unassigned fund balance. The yellow bars show the dollar amount of unassigned fund balance, and the green bars show how much was used each year. So now getting into the budget. So the proposed operating budget is $9,123,456, up from $8.3 million in 2023. That's a $774,000 increase, or just over 9%. Looking at where those increases come from, this pie chart shows that 75% of those increases are from wage and benefit impact factors. So we'll look at those first, and then we'll look at the remaining 25% in just a minute. So the wage and benefit impact factors, starting the fire department, 114,000 of that increase partially comes from a position that was added in 2022, where the wages were paid from the ambulance revolving fund for 2023 with a plan to move those wages to the operating budget in 2024. There's also increased overtime for shift coverage and a proposed new administrative assistant at 24 hours. Additionally, we have funds available for highway seasonal landscaping and a preventative maintenance mechanic. So these would be part-time positions where we meet the growing needs in town. As you know, the school previously provided grounds maintenance services to the town as part of our shared services agreement. They didn't have the staffing and equipment to do that starting in 2023. So we bought a mower and utilized a member of the highway department to perform those services. But moving forward, we need a more sustainable solution where we're not borrowing from departments to meet the needs that we have. Also, as the equipment that we have, it's important to make sure that we stay on top of the maintenance as best we can. And so having somebody who is specifically focused on that task in a part-time capacity will be a step in the right direction. The Recreation Department has proposed moving the entire the funding for the administrative assistant to the operating budget, the remainder of the funding. Currently, the operating budget pays for 25 hours a week for this position. The Recreation Revolving Fund has recently paid for an additional 9 hours, including benefits, to 34 hours a week. So the proposal is to have the operating budget pick that up starting in 2024. The building department has also proposed to add a part-time deputy building inspector at 0.5 FTE for $23,000. And the growing demand in that department is part of the reason, and the upcoming retirement of John Huckins as the building inspector is another contributing factor. It's important to note that that department is offset by user fees in the form of building permit fees. And so those increased costs could be evaluated in conjunction with an increase to the fee structure to make sure that there's no impact to the taxes. Moving on, so other staffing changes, we're looking at census updates, primarily health elections, pay plan, step increase allowance. This would be like the merit increase. This is progression across our pay plan. Cost of living adjustment is currently in the budget at 3%. I expect the select board later this month will look at the actual data available, including CPI and Social Security cost of living adjustment, which just came in at 3.2%, to finalize that number. Benefit cost increase, this is actually a little bit outdated. Just heard last week that our health insurance cost will increase about 16% at a maximum starting in July of 2024. Election costs, there's 4 elections in 2024 and only 1 in 2023, so that costs more money. The library changed a couple of their positions in 2023 and starting in April. And so there's costs to fund that at the full year that we're experiencing in the 2024 budget. There's a proposal to keep the transfer station open the same hours all year round. The cost is marginal at $8,600 and would maintain consistency. One interesting point here, which I'm sure we'll talk more about, but the 2 months that are the busiest at the transfer station by weight are January and December. And so it seems counterintuitive that we would have additional hours through the summer months when our 2 busier months are in the winter. The police department has proposed an accreditation specialist, 240 hours for the year to help be responsive to the LEAC Commission's recommendations for accreditation. And the library has proposed to regrade the program and social media specialist. Moving on, now talking about that 25% of the pie chart, these are the portions of the budget which have increased, the individual line items which have increased more than $10,000. So first, general government buildings contracts. So this is an area where, as we have more facilities and a harder time finding and keeping custodial service or custodial staff, we're starting to explore a model where we would have custodial staff complemented by contracted services. So whether the contracted services come in during a staff vacation, or if they come in on a regular schedule, you know, say once a month to do a deep clean of the facilities and stay on top of the less routine custodial tasks. And so we are making funding available, $22,000 in order to bridge that gap. This is a model that the school undertook a couple of years ago and has had success. General government buildings communications. So we're really just moving this money. You'll see a reduction in admin contracts of well more than 14,000, but the phone system that we use, 3CX, was paid for out of admin contracts, but really it's most appropriately in communications. Ambulance billing, we'll talk more about this next week when the fire department budget is presented, but the intercepts that the services, paramedic services that we receive through Frisbee or McGregor or Dover, those costs are increasing, and so we pay those out of the operating budget. We do recoup some of those costs through the ambulance bills that we send out, but no guarantee that we recoup all of them, and it's not money in, money out. Highway paved roads, this is really just an increase due to inflation, but it's a larger line item, so you see it is over $10,000, but primarily it's used for crack sealing and the knotweed mitigation program that we have. Continuing that 25% of the pie chart, so paving, we're proposing a $50,000 increase here. This is one of those areas we worked with the road agent to reduce the initial budget proposal. He had initially asked for $100,000 to go into the operating budget for additional paving. We proposed adding $50,000 as we did last year, and then increasing that additional warrant article from $100,000 to $150,000. So we can certainly discuss that more as the process continues. Winter contractors up $15,000 to cover the rate increase authorized by the select board. Transfer station supplies, this is primarily trash bags and an inflationary cost increase here. Obviously, the trash bag sales are offset by the trash bag revenue. Recycling or recycling costs continue to increase, and the Transfer Station and Recycling Center Review Committee continues to monitor that closely to make sure that we're taking every step that we can to be both environmentally conscious and fiscally responsible. Now, a couple of line items that decreased more than $10,000 from 2023 to 2024. As I mentioned, admin contracts, so 14,000 of that is from the phone system, but then the balance is savings that we experienced by transitioning managed service providers. Additionally, general government buildings equipment, we have fewer equipment needs right now, and so we were able to reduce that $27,000. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, we fund local government services from property taxes and a variety of other revenue sources. So it's really important to monitor those other revenue sources when looking at and developing a budget, because as those revenue sources increase, the impact to the tax rate and property taxes that folks pays is offset. I mentioned potentially offsetting an increase in the building department by increasing fees paid through building permits. Talked about increases in trash bag prices being offset by the fees that people pay to buy trash bags. And so those are just a couple of specific examples. But looking at the state revenue, which again represents about 12%, 14% of the revenue that we receive in a year, we expect those sources to remain stable or continue to increase. The increase we expect to come from the rooms and meals tax. Motor vehicle registrations were on an increase, a pretty gradual and consistent increase for 8 years. And in 2022, that kind of leveled off, but is increasing again, which is promising. Interest on investments has been the most dramatic change in revenue. That's something that we collected, I think, $15,000 in all of 2022. And just in August alone, we collected $30,000 in interest on investments, obviously just a factor of the interest rates available. I want to give the treasurer credit here for negotiating and maintaining a good relationship with our bank, TD Bank, and maintaining a competitive, fully insured interest rate on our investments that has generated a lot of revenue this year. So that's the operating budget. Now looking at the warrant articles that are being requested this year, many of them are consistent that we've seen year over year. And these funding sources we talked about at the capital improvements program presentation at the last select board meeting on October 2nd. And the select board made a commitment to those funding plans to make sure that the funding that we propose aligns with the projects that we want to complete. And so many of these the select board has reviewed at least at a surface level, but as the departments present each different project, we can talk about them more specifically. So we have $300,000 for the bridge and culvert capital reserve, $300,000 for highway heavy equipment capital reserve, $220,000 to fund the town's 20% share of the Old Settlers Road Bridge project. The state is funding 80% of the project, and that this is currently scheduled for fiscal year 2025, but we need to make our funds available. Richardson Pond Dam, this has probably been the biggest conversation at the CIP with the planning board and so far with the budget committee at the most recent meeting, that funding source. The advisory budget committee has invited the Conservation Commission to an upcoming budget committee meeting to discuss the funding source and whether or not the conservation fund could or should pick up the full cost of that project. This select board has previously maintained a commitment to considering a cost share, and so we have as a placeholder a $200,000 warrant article, but certainly more information to come on that one. $150,000 for public safety building design. We've talked about this. $150,000 for the paving non-lapsing warrant article. Again, this is up from $100,000 regularly. $100,000 for fire truck capital reserve, $150,000 for dam repair engineering replacement capital reserve. This is primarily for projects at the Swains Lake Dam. $50,000 for emergency communications capital reserve, $50,000 for police equipment capital reserve, $25,000 for transfer station capital reserve. This next one's a new warrant article request from the Recreation Department, setting aside $15,000 for park maintenance and future infrastructure. The $10,000 for fire rescue equipment, $3,000 for library technology capital reserve. So the total request is a little over $1.6 million. And like I said, one of the big points of conversation will be how those are presented, either on a tax rate or with funding from unassigned fund balance. As I mentioned, at 15.3%, the select board has a surplus of unassigned fund balance to consider utilizing. And so we can fund a large portion of those warrant article requests through unassigned fund balance, but whether that's done on the warrant or at tax rate setting later next year will be a topic of discussion. So that's the presentation. Again, the budget binder is available at barrington.nh.gov/2024 budget. You can reach out to administration at barrington.nh.gov or ask at barrington.nh.gov with any questions. And each select board meeting through December, we will hear from an individual department budget that's being presented. And in early December, the budget committee and select board will finalize the budget proposal, which goes to voters in March of 2024. Thank you.
I would like to make the note that this presentation is in the electronic budget binder, which is on the town website. Pardon?
And in your budget binder.
Correct. Thank you for bringing yours. Yeah. Does anyone have a comment before we open the floor for our ABC?
I think
Steve, would you like to come?
Good to hear Steve.
Welcome.
Thank you. I wanted to formally thank Connor and his team, Administrator MacGyver, for putting together the binder and leading us through a process to build a budget for the town. He's done a great job in adding information each time we go through this cycle, now especially about the unfunded fund balance and how it's used and how it can be used, in a lot of background information that I find very useful. So I think that's going to be something that's going to really play a big part of our discussion as we go forward, just due to the magnitude of the warrant articles that are going to be presented to the townspeople. I also want to thank all the department heads for the great work they did, because when I go through this budget initially, it is a very reasonable presentation and request. It leaves us in the ABC with a little fine tuning. I think we'll go through the process, but also some very significant conceptual issues relating to fund balance, other targets and things to do, as well as looking at the COLA and saying that that is appropriately structured for our employees. So I'm looking forward to the process and working with the board. Thank the board also for respecting the ABC and anything we have to say. And some are somewhat off the wall, but we try our best to assist the town and the select board in their deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve, for your service and for all of the ABC. And for the public, we moved to try to have more public meetings online. So the ABC is now recorded. People can watch it in real time or later. Did you have a comment, Dan?
Just one comment. When we talked about the our funded balance, thank you. Our fund balance, it's sitting at 15%. I think traditionally, over the past several years, I've been involved with this. We've kind of set a target at the midpoint of the recommendation from the state, which would be about 12.5%. put more and more of these warrant articles, taxpayer maybe actually be able to reduce that even further, but traditionally, or at least in the last 10 years, I guess, shot for 12.5% for the, sitting right now at 15%.
So you're suggesting a goal of ours, which I would agree with.
Just,
Keep it closer
like I
to
say,
the 12.
just historically.
I'm currently taking the New Hampshire Municipal Association financial certification, and they very clearly indicated that the 12.5% is an appropriate amount, especially for municipality our size. So I would agree with Dan in reference to that as a goal.
So I think we'll just move on then, and we'll be coming back to all of the various presentations as we look at each of the departments in more in-depth. So our next item of business is C, acceptance of the Gopher Municipal Boat Launch Investment Program funds. So we've applied and received $100,000 to develop a municipal boat launch on Ayers Lake. And so once we get that money, we actually need to make sure we can do what we think we can do with that. But we need to, as a select board, say that we will accept that money.
Hats off to Amy and Connor for drafting the grant. And I think the other piece to it was we are required to expend 33,000 of our own. Am I correct in stating that?
Well, 25%.
25%. Okay. So I would make a motion to accept and expend the Gopher Municipal Boat Launch Investment Program funds in the amount of 100,000.
Second.
Okay, before we vote, I would like to open this to public comment. So in the room, is there any public comment? Okay, looks like none. How about online? Any public comment on the acceptance of the Municipal Boat Launch Investment Program funds of $100,000? Doesn't look like there's any comment. So we'll go back to, we have a vote.
Motion is
Motion and a
Thank
second?
you.
Sure.
On the floor that has been made and seconded, so roll call.
Hardikoff, aye.
Manshrick, aye.
Capiello, aye. So we do accept those funds. The consent agenda, now we've removed item F, and we have removed item A. So could I have a
Motion to approve the October 16th, 2023 consent agenda, items B through E.
Second that motion.
roll call?
Hardikoff, aye.
Manshrick, aye.
Capiello, aye. All right, moving along. Appointments. We have an appointment for a library trustee alternate, Ezra Hodgins, that we looked at last month. And so today we're up for a vote on Mr. Hodgins. He's interested in becoming a library trustee alternate, and his appointment is supported by the library trustees. This is for a term expiring in 2024.
I move that we appoint Ezra Hodgins as library trustee alternate with a term expiring in 2024.
And I would enthusiastically second that.
Moved and, well, roll call, excuse me.
Hardikoff, aye.
Manshrick, aye.
Capiello, aye. Okay, that is approved. We'll move on to Isinglass Local River Advisory Committee. And Melvin is up for a vote tonight. She's interested in being reappointed as a member of the Isinglass Local River Advisory Committee for a term expiring in 2026.
Sure, I'll make a motion to appoint Ann Melvin to the Isinglass Local River Advisory Committee with a term expiring in 2026.
Second.
Roll call.
Hardikoff, aye.
Manshrick, aye.
Capiello, aye. Moved in second. Trustee of the trust funds, we'll have a vote tonight on Sally Varney. She's applied to fill the vacant position on the trustee of the trust funds. So this was for a term that will expire in March of 2025. So this is
I
a
moved to
full-term
appoint-
appointment.
Oh, you could, I moved to appoint Sally Varney as trustee of the trust fund per RSA 669:73 with a term expiring in 2025.
And I would second that motion.
Roll call.
Hardikoff, aye.
Mancheck, aye.
Capello, aye. Moving on to Zoning Board of Adjustment, Jackie Flanagan is up for discussion tonight, so we are looking at her application. She's interested in becoming a member of the Zoning Board of Adjustment for a full appointment with a term expiring in 2024. And then we will vote on it at the following meeting. Does anyone have any comments on her application?
As ZBA chairperson, I reached out on social media asking for people with expertise in either surveying, engineering, real estate work. And a few months back, Jackie was excessively busy and said she'd give thought to it. Then I reached back out and we asked her if she would attend the zoning board basics training and see what she thought of the position based on her knowledge base and what she could contribute in that volunteer role. She took that training and then agreed to apply for the position on the zoning board.
Great. Great. And for the public, we do have openings on planning board, so if anyone has any interest, they could certainly talk to John Driscoll or myself about that. Next item, staff report. Would you be giving staff report tonight, Tiffany?
I can run through it quickly, sure. So October work anniversaries, we already went over previous meeting, training opportunities. Same, Connor said that we've already run through those ones, so we're good. I will bring attention to the additional 2024 budget binder documents. Those are things that were added in the past week or so. In addition to the links available online, we have them posted on the 2024 budget page, which can be reached at barrington.nh.gov/2024 budget, along with all of the other 2024 budget documents.
I would just like to ask Select Board, are any of you planning to attend the annual conference? Okay.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm thinking I might do the 15th. So.
Scary.
Okay, moving on to old business. So updated minutes, if people would look at page 3 of the minutes, the section where TA MacGyver reviewed the following funding source recommendations. I thought perhaps it implied that we had decided on the financial split on Richardson Dam. So my suggestion might be in the italics here. After discussion about the projects, the select board supported the proposed reprioritization and considered funding plans for each project. Specific dollar amounts for the Richardson Dam will be discussed at future meetings. What would people think about that?
I think so. We were waiting to hear back from Department of Environmental Services to see how they would consider the redoing of the dam. Yeah.
Right.
So I'm comfortable with that.
That we're waiting for further information from DES.
That is listed somewhere in the meeting minutes that I read.
Does everyone
I think
agree on
that's
that?
more accurate. Represent-
So I guess we should vote on that. Roll call for the additions to the.
Yep, Hardikoff, aye.
Mancheck, aye.
Capello, aye. All right, new business. Is there any new business that comes before us? I'll start with other select board members.
I don't think so.
Here. We should vote on
We
that now?
removed it. I think we removed it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would
we
be fine with
removed
that,
it.
so we don't really even discuss it yet. Okay, select board members' reports and concerns. Select board member Hardikoff, we'll start with you.
So we had a wonderful time at the transfer station, handing out the master plan housing survey. There were 24 hours left to complete the survey. We handed out all flyers. I think there were 200 of them. Very assertively at the exit gate to the transfer station. And I had reached out to Aaron as well, and I'll indicate this to Mark as well, but our transfer station runs like a well-oiled machine. It was amazing to me, the number of cars that went through there. But I hope as many residents as possible participate in that housing survey, because hearing your voice and putting together the next future plans for the town and how housing will be designed here and how zoning ordinances will affect housing is very important. ZBA had a continuance of a case. It's being continued one more month, and I'm happy to see we may potentially have a full ZBA board hearing that case.
Select Board Manshek.
School board had a special town meeting and their regular board meeting on the 5th of October. The special town meeting did accept the $133,000 plus that were given or returned by the state. They were going to use them mostly for recommendations from FEMA and Homeland Security on actually securing the school. The regular board meeting then met. There is a member of the school board has resigned, and they were posting the openings. They were going to interview people on tomorrow, the 17th, and they posted it on their sign. They will vote on it the 7th of November. Place that person. They're trying to recruit 3 members for their ABC. And
3 members, okay.
and that was about it. There were some other things they discussed. Transfer Station Committee did not meet, has not met. ABC, we have that report. ABC and the school board meet tomorrow.
All right. I do not have anything to report on Planning Board. We did not have a quorum for our last meeting, so we were not able to meet. So again, we're looking for volunteers for Planning Board. I would like to go ahead and open public comment again. So anyone in the room? Okay, looks like none. Let's move on to online. Is there any public comment online? Not seeing any. We will need to have a non-public session tonight for personnel reasons. And we need to have a motion.
In that case, I move that we go to non-public meeting for personnel.
I'll second that.
Hardikoff, aye.
Manshek, aye.
Capello, aye. So for people in the audience, Connor made pink cookies in honor of his new daughter. So please come up and take some home with you. All right, I'm gonna go hand these out. Come on.
No, those two.
And we have to read that statement.
Me too. I can-
In public at 7:35 PM. Motion to enter into the regular meeting again.
Second,
Hardikoff, aye.
Patrick, aye.
Gabriella, aye. And we have a statement for the minutes.
Oh,
Sorry.
that's all right. In non-public, Chief George Joy shared the status of a submitted complaint with the select board and no decisions were made.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
And second at 7:35 PM.
All right.
Fastest meeting we've ever held.
Thank you, everyone.
5 minutes.
We didn't vote. We didn't vote.
We didn't vote, that's
Oh,
right.
Hardikoff, aye.
Patrick, aye.
Gabriella, aye. Meeting adjourned. See you next week.